that we have material out there, FOIAs out there, on the construction of the Fed building. On top of that, we've been kind of prodding the Fed, as I told Eric, on transparency issues for years, and we will continue. The other issue that popped up this week that I think is worth talking about, because Judicial Watch has been seeking transparency from the Federal Reserve for well over a decade plus. And it's like banging your head against the wall, because the Federal Reserve gets special protection from the courts, and they literally have contempt for the people's right to know. So I was particularly impressed and loved how President Trump, who's at loggerheads with the head of the Fed, Jerome Powell, over his failure to cut interest rates thus far, has focused on the fact that the Fed is spending $2-3 billion renovating their headquarters. $2 to $3 billion. And that sort of money should get you headquarters on Mars, as far as I'm concerned. And so President Trump, who, as you know from his background, run a construction operation or two. Many buildings have been built on his watch through his companies. Went and visited the Federal Reserve to see how the construction was going, and this is just so phenomenal what happened here. Let's watch it here.
It looks like it's about 3.1 billion. It went up a little bit, or a lot. So the 2.7 is now 3.1.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody at the Fed.
Yeah, it just came out.
Arno said it about 3.1 as well.
3.1,
3.2. This came from us?
Yes. I don't know who does that.
You're including the Martin renovation. You just added.
Our entire capital.
Yeah, you just added in a third building. Is what that is. That's a third building.
Well, no, but it's a building that's being built.
No, it was built 5 years ago. We finished Martin 5 years ago.
It's part of the overall work.
But it's
So,
not new.
Are there things the chairman can say to you today that would make you back off some of the earlier criticism?
Well, I'd love him to lower interest rates. Other than that, what can I tell you?
Wasn't that great? And that's kind of, I commented online, that's a nice example of the way accountability ought to work in this town. The president taking a personal interest in a matter and then moving and going and holding the responsible official accountable. And it doesn't mean the person's going to get fired. He said he's not going to fire Powell probably. But he was held accountable in front of the world. And I talked about the issue about transparency and Fed corruption and accountability with Eric Bolling as well yesterday.
This live, watching Jerome Powell and President inside and just with his tail between his legs, and then out here explaining, why are we spending $3.1 billion to renovate a building that cost a lot less than that to build in the first place, valued at a lot less than that. Your thoughts on this wild...
From the usual suspects here in D.C. Oh, well, that happens all the time in government.
Yeah.
Well, the American people are done with that. And Judicial Watch has been a big proponent of transparency for the Fed. And this is exactly why we need transparency and oversight. The catchphrase is audit the Fed. Many of us have been calling out it for years. This is just one example of an agency that has power that really is not comparable anywhere else in our government in terms of our economy, that has little checks and balances as it relates to its conduct. You ask for records. It's one of the most difficult agencies to get information from about its operations and what it's up to. And you would knock your socks off to hear the various arguments they use. For instance, they've got all the local Fed banks, right? They say those Fed banks are outside contractors, and they don't have to give us records about their communications with them. I mean, there's not a darn thing the agency does that to me is suitably transparent. And I'm glad the president's holding the chairman accountable. Whether he fires him or not, or the fight over the interest rates, that's irrelevant to me. It's someone being held accountable for an outrageous misuse of tax dollars.
You know, there's a question. One of the reporters said, well, you know, if this is the last thing you need to kind of make the economy whole and make it yours and more robust, why don't you just fire him? And Trump said something. He said, well, because it's a lot more difficult. That is the general consensus, that it's difficult to fire. You're not supposed to really get involved in, one-sidism with the Fed. You're supposed to let them, their only job is to keep prices in check. And you don't want it to become partisan, but this is a clear example. There are so many indicators that say that interest rates should be substantially lower right now, given what's going on in the economy. I don't think it would roil the markets the way a lot of people think it would if he fired Jerome Powell.
Yeah, I do think it would be less, as everything we told about with Trump, if he does X, the world will collapse. That's never happened. And taking a reformist mentality, I think, is something would be good to do. I just think back to how Powell and the Fed had no problem financing the greatest expansion of government in modern American history under Joe Biden. Trillions of dollars in spending with low interest rates. And once that gets under control, he wants to keep the interest rates high. I'm sorry, but I think it's fair to conclude maybe some of those decision makings are more political than economic.
Yeah, Tom, really good. I'm sorry we extended you here a little bit. I hope we didn't make you late for any sort of appointments. Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch. Always good to have you on, my friend. Good to talk to you.
Thank you, Eric. So you can be sure that Judicial Watch has some FOIAs out there. I haven't even checked this, but I know Judicial Watch well enough as its president to know our people are already on it. That we have material out there, FOIAs out there on the construction of the Fed building. On top of that, we've been kind of prodding the Fed, as I told Eric, on transparency issues for years, and we will continue. It's kind of the old phrase that I think it was Ron Paul's father used to say, Rand Paul's father, Ron, audit the Fed, right? We've got to hold that entity accountable. It's politicized, and it's so damaging to our economy and the confidence in our economy to have the Fed playing games on behalf of the left. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.